Hi everyone, this is Stephen Judge, clinical naturopath and nutritionist in Australia, Sydney, Australia. Welcome to the live stream. I'm trying this on my phone today as I'm having a few issues with my internet connection. But yeah, let's make this interactive. If you're watching now or watching the replay, please say hi. Leave me a comment, let me know how you're feeling about what I'm saying. If you have any insights or questions. I'm hoping to get some good interaction and questions from anyone about this topic because it's quite common, particularly if you're stuck about how to approach your gut health, which impacts your entire well-being. As science continues to validate what Eastern traditions have proclaimed forever, that disease essentially begins in the gut. So please say hi or leave me a comment, and I'd love to get back to anyone who has any questions or insights around this topic. I'm also offering a free handout that summarizes some of the things that I'm mentioning today and the difference between pre and probiotic foods. So if you would like a copy, just leave me a comment below so that I can add you to my mailing list and I can send you through a copy. Most clients leave with this in their hands anyway, so if you want a head start, please just drop your name below and I'll send that through to you this afternoon. So I could talk about this for an entire day, but I'm just going to break it down into some practical steps and main takeaway points. So what are probiotics? What are prebiotics? How are these different? And how can you utilize these therapies today? And also just a bit of troubleshooting advice for if you've tried some of these things and you're not seeing any improvement, or you may even typically be reacting negatively to some of these things, even though you've been told that they're very essential for healing your gut. So I'll just really be touching the surface with some key takeaway points, which can be summarized in a bit more detail in the handout. So first things first, probiotics and prebiotics, what is the difference? So probiotics, the more commonly known, are beneficial bacteria. So they're the live bacteria found in certain foods or supplements that provide a range of different health benefits. So probiotic, just think pro-life, probiotics, pro-life, beneficial bacteria. So prebiotics are food for these bacteria. So just think probiotics are the bacteria and prebiotics are the food for these bacteria. So technically prebiotics are non-digestible fibers that selectively stimulate the growth and activity of one or many numbers of bacteria in the colon. So the crucial point to make here between the two is that probiotics do not enhance the growth or the proliferation of new bugs in the gut, and they do not colonize the gut and stay there. This is a myth and a huge misconception out in the blogosphere and the general public, and even supplement companies kind of boldly make this claim about their products as they would because they're trying to sell a product. But probiotics are actually transient, as in they come down to the gut, linger from anywhere between around 5 to 10 days. They have their beneficial healing effects, and then they leave the gut. So yeah, they're transient. It is actually the job of prebiotics to stimulate the growth of new beneficial bugs in the gut, among many other benefits. But this is kind of the key difference between the action of the two. Probiotics do not colonize the gut, and they do not stimulate the growth of new beneficial flora. This is what prebiotics do. So they're really important to incorporate into not only a treatment plan for gut healing and general gut health, but just everyone's overall health. Scientists continue to validate the importance of having a healthy microbiome. So to meet the criteria as being classified strictly as a prebiotic, foods must meet the criteria of the definition that I mentioned before, that they selectively stimulate the growth and activity of bacteria in the colon. So it's not just any fiber that's fermentable, it has to selectively stimulate the growth and proliferation of specific bugs. So I'm not saying probiotics aren't important. Humans have been consuming them for many thousands of years in the form of sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, to name a few. And they've always been, a super important component of the human diet. They're very important to use not only post-antibiotics, but also during antibiotic use. They're quite useful. That's another myth kind of dispelled by science. It's actually very useful to take them during a course of antibiotics to protect your gut flora. And, probiotics have been shown to be really useful for a variety of conditions, including in the realms of mental health, hormonal imbalances, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, high cholesterol, insulin resistance, basically anything where there's a lot of underlying inflammation and an overactive or compromised immune system, which we can connect to so many conditions, So we really need to get to the major underlying driver of these and really look at our gut health and our microbiome. So a question I get asked quite a lot is what is the best strength to look for in a probiotic? Is 30 billion CFU, colony forming units, good? 60 billion, 100 billion? People generally with supplements, want to know, is stronger better? This can't be answered black and white, as prescribing a probiotic's not really based on strength. It's more determined by what strain the probiotic is. So for example, Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is a very well researched and useful strain for a variety of conditions, and dosages range from say about 10 to 50 billion, depending on what you're doing. I'll prescribe, say, for example, this specific probiotic, and clients might mention that, it seems like a very low dose, shouldn't it be a bit stronger? I've seen ones out in the market that are 500 billion, wouldn't that be better? But that's not really the point when prescribing probiotics. It's not always about stronger is better, it's more about being strain specific and promoting diversity by getting it in your diet as well. So, I'm not saying megadosing isn't useful with probiotics, but some people respond quite well. But it really comes down to the individual, what you're taking it for, what strains you would do best on, what conditions you're dealing with. Have you had a lot of antibiotics? There are specific strains to take during and after a course of antibiotics. It's not really about having to take the strongest one. And some people are super sensitive. I've seen people react really badly to these huge mega doses of antibiotics. Some people definitely need to go in lower and slower. So basically it is a really good idea to speak with a practitioner who can dissect research about probiotics and who is not simply influenced by companies. As these companies are going to tell you theirs is better, they're going to present all their own research. Just make sure you're chatting with someone who kind of understands all the nuances and the differences between the probiotic strains and who is also educated about prebiotics. So, if probiotics don't colonize the gut and grow new bugs, what do? They exert their effects by competing with potentially pathogenic or bad bacteria. Probiotics can potentially bind to viruses and reduce their expression. They produce antimicrobial substances that selectively kill off bad bugs and yeast. They reduce very hypersensitive immune reactions. They improve immunity in the gut. They have anti-inflammatory actions. They strengthen the intestinal barrier, so they're very useful when dealing with leaky gut or intestinal hyperpermeability. That's another whole talk. These are all fantastic things, but in the long term, it is so important to focus on prebiotic intake because they have some similar positive effects to probiotics, but we need them specifically to reduce imbalance of our gut microbiome and reduce bad bugs by selectively enhancing the growth of beneficial bugs in the gut, because this is what probiotics are not useful for. And this is a crucial long-term treatment, prebiotic therapies, particularly in chronic gut conditions, chronic constipation, IBS, IBD, but also high cholesterol, insulin resistance. Prebiotics are clinically trialed to do very well at improving blood sugar metabolism, reducing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I recently wrote an article in my blog summarizing a recent journal article that showed that prebiotics can dramatically improve sleep quality. It's really incredible stuff, and we really do need to look at the quality of our gut flora and digestive function no matter what condition we're dealing with, and just for overall health. So in my handout I have a list of prebiotic foods, which include, some of these foods include garlic, leeks, legumes, like beans and lentils, beetroot, artichoke, prebiotic-like foods, which have been shown to selectively stimulate the growth of gut flora, such as cacao powder. Green tea is fantastic at stimulating our beneficial gut flora. Green tea tablets with a high dose of catechins, and actually an excellent strategy during and post antibiotic therapy. Many people wouldn't know that one, but it's actually a really good one. But the issue we run into with eating prebiotic foods, particularly those of us who have very sensitive digestion, who might be diagnosed with IBS, and therefore might be avoiding high FODMAP foods. So the tricky part here in restoring the gut flora in IBS, because in IBS there's typically a lot of underlying gut inflammation and dysbiosis, so an overgrowth of bad bugs as opposed to good bugs. So this becomes tricky because you've been told to avoid high FODMAP foods, but long term it is super important to be eating these foods to restore the gut flora. Reducing FODMAP foods in the diet essentially long term is going to starve our microbiome, which is a key underlying factor of why we have IBS and gut conditions in the first place. So people can get really stuck here, and so my go-to foundational starting point for these people is to meet them, decide which probiotic strains they most benefit from, and look at everything that's going on with them, and then basically get them straight onto a very specific prebiotic called partially hydrolyzed guar gum, PHGG for short, which is not the same as plain guar gum you'd see in Australia. It has to be the partially hydrolyzed form. So it's a non-gas forming prebiotic which can be used safely for people with IBS and most sensitive gut conditions, people who have FODMAP sensitivity, because it is a low FODMAP and non-gas forming prebiotic. And it's really cheap. I just got a client onto it this afternoon. It's like $10 a tub on iherb.com. I tell most clients they can take this for the rest of their life. I throw it in my smoothie every morning. Even typically, I'm doing some gut work with clients. Herbal tonics are helping, probiotics are helping, stress management's helping, but it's when they've added this powder into their diet they've noticed some pretty radical shifts in their words. So getting some really good clinical feedback and also good personal experience using it myself. So if you're really stuck, you've tried a lot of gut stuff, you're very sensitive, nothing seems to be working, please consider getting on iherb.com and ordering this partially hydrolyzed guar gum. It goes under the name of sun fiber if you punch it into the search bar. And crucial long-term and immediate strategy for correcting gut flora imbalance for anyone trying to restore your gut and just for overall gut health. Incredible at regulating bowel motions. Whether you've got chronic constipation or diarrhea, it regulates both by stimulating the growth of gut bugs. There's some really good research on that. And so that's it for me today. I just really wanted to highlight the major difference between the two, between probiotics and prebiotics, drop a few gems of knowledge. It's a pretty huge topic. I might go into some further specific details about certain areas in future videos. If anyone has specific things they'd like me to chat about in this realm, please let me know in the comments. I would love to accommodate my talks to my audience. Just let me know if there's any burning topics that you would like me to cover. Please drop me a comment if you'd like me to get that probiotic and prebiotic handout for you, explaining the difference between the two and different sources of foods. Yeah, so that's it from me. Have a lovely afternoon, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.